Welcome everyone to Are You Ready to Garden, our holiday edition tonight. And we've got an exciting lineup of three of my colleagues here that are going to present some very interesting information on holiday plants and talk about Christmas trees, selection and care. It's good to be back on the air, or back on the web, I should say, to see everyone for Are You Ready to Garden? And we're going to start off with one of my colleagues right here in Middlesex County, Angela Monahan. And Angela is our Master Gardener Coordinator with Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Middlesex County. And she holds a BS in Plant Science and a certificate in Economic and Medicinal Plants from Rutgers University. And we're very fortunate to have her as our Master Gardener Coordinator for Middlesex County, which we have 2 active classes going on Thursday evenings and Friday mornings. And Angela, welcome. And Angela is going to talk to you about some of the holiday plants and their care, because many of us, I should say, get holiday plants, and then we wonder, how should we maintain these plants and take the best care of them so that we can get the most use out of them. So Angela is going to go through all the caveats and give you some really good information on holiday plant care.
Thanks so much, Bill. All right, so today, this evening, I'm going to be talking about holiday horticulture, and I'll be discussing the 3 of the most popular horticultural plants that we will receive as gifts or that we see in the stores and may want for ourselves. So I'll be discussing poinsettias, Scholenbergia, which is commonly known as Thanksgiving and Christmas cactus, and also Amaryllis. So to start off with poinsettias, there's a little really cool history behind them. The scientific name is Euphorbia pulcherrima. Pulcherrima means most beautiful. It is a gorgeous plant, and it's native to Mexico and Central America. So it is a more tropical plant, will not survive outdoors, so in the winter, year-round. But the Aztecs used to call it Cuitlaxochil, which means starflower, and they used it in a lot of their decorations around the time when the bracts would form the beautiful colorations that you see. And it grows wild as a shrub, and in a lot of tropical, subtropical areas, they'll use poinsettias as a hedgerow, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And the first U.S. ambassador to Mexico was Joel Roberts Poinsett. He was from South Carolina, and he was appointed by President John Quincy Adams in the 1920s to be the ambassador to Mexico. And Poinsett actually brought back some cuttings of poinsettias from Mexico. It wasn't considered a poinsettia at that point. It became known as a poinsettia in honor of him. And so he was one of the major proponents to making poinsettias as popular as they are today. So a little poinsettia botany here. What people commonly think of as the flower petals are actually modified leaves, and they're called bracts. So all the colors that you see are modified leaves, and here in this photo, you'll see that the bracts are a pink color, and the actual flower is the small yellow bud, cyathea, that you're seeing with the arrow pointed here. And so when you're choosing poinsettias, say you're at the store or you're at a plant sale, you want to choose poinsettia plants that have the cyatheas that are closed and not quite blooming yet. So that means the plant is still going to have a lot of flowering left in it and a longer life in your home. So choosing poinsettias that the flowers haven't all opened up yet. And poinsettias are really neat. They range in colors from red that we commonly see, sometimes orange, pink to white, and there's also color breaking, which I'll show you in a little bit. The color change is actually triggered by shorter winter days. So when you're seeing that those bracts change color, it's being signaled by the light, and usually the shorter day length periods in the winter. And Cyathea are the actual true flowers, which you are seeing here. And it's the most commonly grown houseplant in the U.S. It's so popular during this time period. You may not see it year round, but so many people purchase it and display it in their homes that it's one of the most popular houseplants grown. Okay, Poinsettia Care. So when you bring a poinsettia home, just make sure that in transition that you don't leave the poinsettia in the car, that you're really minimizing the shock of the cold from going from place to place. And this way, you're not shocking the plant, it won't wilt on you, making sure that you're taking it from the store to where you purchased it to your car and into your home as fast as possible. And when you get home, you should place the poinsettia plant in a south, an east, or a west-facing window for bright and direct light. And usually, common room temperature is about 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be perfect for poinsettia growth. And you also want to avoid drafts and drying locations. So next to a fireplace might be beautiful, but it might not be the best place for your poinsettia. You also want to keep the soil moist, not wet, but moist, so about 1 to 2 inches below the soil line is what you want to test. If that feels dry, then you should water your plant. And when you're watering, you might want to take it out of the decorative foil that it may be placed in, put it in the sink, let the water run through and all the water drain out before placing it back into the foil. You don't want to allow the roots to sit in water for too long because that could cause root rot and could cause decay in the plant. Just a little plug here, there is a Rutgers Floriculture Poinsettia sale. Nikki Graff, who is the director of the Floriculture Greenhouse on Rutgers campus, is having a sale today through the end of the week on Friday. She trials over 50 varieties a year, and she has them sent from different companies that want her to trial these different cultivars that she grows in the greenhouse. And like I said, she has a lot of great varieties, which I will show you right now. I really like these white varieties. So Jador White Pearl is gorgeous. This one has a very petite white bract, and the plant overall is a little bit shorter. And I really enjoy the Alaska White as well because of the serrated leaf margins. I think it's very unique. It's not as true white as maybe the White Pearl, but it is a gorgeous white color. Also, the Jador Dark Pink, which was Nikki's favorite, is a beautiful kind of darker pink color, similar in bract shapes, kind of more petite. My favorite is the Superba New Glitter. I love the color breaking here where you're seeing red, but also a little bit of white in the bracts. I really enjoy that. It does look a little bit glittery. It's very fun. Kayla Red is also very interesting. Again, this bract has more of the serrated leaf edge, serrated bract margins, and it's a kind of a twist on your traditional red bract poinsettia. And then Premium Ice Crystal I thought was also another unique variety. That one's neat because along the center midrib is kind of a nice light pink, but on the edge of the bract margin is a little bit darker pink. And I thought that was another gorgeous cultivar as well. Okay, so extension professor at University of Vermont, Dr. Leonard Perry, built this great calendar on for folks who want to rebloom their poinsettias every year. So you don't have to throw out your poinsettia, at the end of the holiday season. You can keep your poinsettia year after year and encourage it to rebloom and have it almost like a new plant every year. So around New Year's Day, you want to fertilize with an all-purpose houseplant fertilizer. You can read the recommended rates on the product label. And then you also want to continue providing adequate light because it should bloom through January, maybe even into February if you're lucky. And then around Valentine's Day, you want to do a little plant check. You check for any signs of insects such as whitefly or even fungus gnats. I know a lot of times I see fungus gnats on poinsettias if it's overwatered. So making sure that, in general, when you're watering your plants, you're just kind of checking out your plants for any insects or disease. That's a really good common practice. And then if your plant has become too leggy, which means the nodes or the space between the leaves have become too long, you can cut that back and to about 5 inches tall, making a more bushy plant. And that will be more attractive in the long run. Around St. Patrick's Day, you can remove any of the dried and faded parts of the plant. You're adding maybe a little more soil on the top. And, you would want to use a potting media, not compost or soil from your garden. And then you want to also, again, just keep the plant in a really bright interior room. Around Memorial Day, you can cut back your plant again for a more bushy plant, to about 2 to 3 inches. And this will help create a more compact plant. And then you could also repot it into a larger container if you so choose. Again, using growing media. And then around Father's Day, you can move the plant outside in indirect light, and you want to kind of do this slowly. So you're hardening off your plant, because if you put your plant outside from inside, through the whole winter, you can actually burn the leaves and the bracts. So you want to make sure you put it in a lightly shaded area so that the leaves and the bracts do not burn. Around 4th of July, you can go ahead again and trim the plant. You can move it into full sun. By this time, the plant should be acclimated to the outdoor conditions, and you want to continue to water and fertilize to help build the growth of the plant. And then around Labor Day, you might want to move your plant indoors, maybe to a spot that has bright indirect light. And as new growth appears, you kind of just want to start cutting back on the fertilizer towards the end of the summer. You don't want to fertilize any indoor house plants in the winter or in the fall, because that encourages growth, and you don't want to encourage growth at that point in the plant's growing stage. And then around the equinox in September, you want to go ahead and start cutting back on the light by putting the plant in a closet or somewhere for about 12 to 20 hours of uninterrupted darkness, and then also 11 hours of bright light each day. So maintaining temperatures of about 60, and you still want to water and fertilize, but you're kind of cutting back at this point, maybe not watering as much because the plant isn't growing as much. So you also want to rotate the plant so that you get it gets an ample amount of light each day. And then around Thanksgiving, discontinue the short day, long night treatment. Put your plant in a bright sunny area, and then you'll see the bracts starting to turn color. And by Christmas, you should have beautiful bracts that have come to color back to what it was the year before when you purchased the plant or received the plant. So if you want to read this, this is on a website. Just go on to Google University of Vermont Poinsettia blooming. Okay, so Thanksgiving and Christmas cactus. The scientific name is Scholenbergia Troncata and Scholenbergia bridgesii, respectively. They are members of the cactus family, but unlike cacti that we normally think of, they do not tolerate arid and dry conditions. So they do like it a little more moist. They like a more humid area because they are native to Brazilian rainforests. And so these are actually considered epiphytes, and that means they just grow on the branches and trunks of trees in their natural habitat. So flowers can be purple, pink, red, even yellow, or white. And they can live to be 100 years old. So it could be a family heirloom one day in your family. So there are some distinguishing features to be able to tell what kind of Scholenbergia you have, whether it be Thanksgiving cactus, Christmas cactus, or even Easter cactus. So what we might consider the leaves are actually modified stems called cladophylls. And you can tell which is which by looking at the margins here. So on the left, you see the Thanksgiving cactus has deeply serrated, almost pointy serrations, almost looking like claws. And this is another common name for the Thanksgiving cactus, is a crab cactus. And so looking at that, and if it's very kind of pointy, then you have a Thanksgiving cactus. If it also blooms around Thanksgiving, then you know it's a Thanksgiving cactus. And it blooms about a month before the Christmas cactus does. The Christmas cactus stem margins are a little more rounded, and they're not as frequent, so that would be a telltale sign of the Christmas cactus, whereas the Easter cactus has more of a scalloped edge that are kind of concentrated in the center of the cladophyll. Again, this is another short day plant, so blooming does occur once the days get shorter. And general overall care, they like bright and direct sunlight, watering again to the top 2 inches of the soil once it feels dry. If the plant feels very light, that's another way to tell that the plant needs water. Again, you want to keep it away from drafts. Drafts can cause disbudding, and you might lose flower buds that way. And you want to, again, fertilize in regular intervals during the late spring and through the summer. If you're interested in reblooming your Christmas or Thanksgiving cactus, they can be over summered outside in partial sun. They can get sunburned, so again, be careful to slowly acclimate your plants to the outside conditions. After you bring them in, around Labor Day or so, you want to keep in a really cool place, dark location for about 12 hours for 6 to 8 weeks until buds form. So from September until about late October, November, and then you'll start to see the buds actually forming. Cut back on watering during this period, and then you'll start to see flowers appear around Thanksgiving. The plants do like to be pot bound, so making sure that you're not repotting it every few years. It doesn't really need that. They kind of like having their roots close together, and the flowers will form on the larger cladophylls. So when you bring in your plant at the end of the summer, if you see some of the smaller modified stems, then you can take them off of the plant, and that larger one behind it will grow a flower. So they do need to have a little more energy, a little bit bigger cladophyll in order to grow a flower. Okay, Amaryllis. So the scientific name is actually Hippeastrum. They're native to South America, which is really neat. All of the plants that I mentioned this evening are all native to the Americas. And while it's not a true amaryllis, the actual true amaryllis are grown in South Africa. The common plant that we see that's marketed to us is in the Amaryllis family, but its genus name is Hippeastrum. So they're both related. They both have a similar look to them, similar structure, grow from bulbs, just different from genetics. And so they are really easy to grow. They have large trumpet-shaped flowers. They have a great range of colors, from like really dark, intense reds to bi-color pinks and reds and whites, even salmon, and they can be very gorgeous and dramatic. So if you are looking to get the bulb and just growing it yourself, you want to choose larger bulbs, because the larger bulbs are going to have larger flowers, more abundant stalks, flower stalks, and so it is worth the investment to pay a little bit more money to get a larger bulb. And you want to plant it in a pot or a container that has about 1 inch spacing between the bulb and the pot. And when you're choosing a pot for your amaryllis, something that's a little bit heavier, maybe not a plastic pot, but something terracotta, clay, something like that, which will help prevent the plant from bending over. you want to use a well-drained potting media. Plant the bulb so it's about halfway covered, and the soil line is about 1 inch below the pot edge. Sunny location, cooler temps, about 60, 65, and this will prolong blooms. If it's too warm, too sunny, the blooms can be spent faster. The flower stalk will emerge first, and then if the stalk does begin to lean a little bit, you can stake it up with a wooden dowel, maybe some chopsticks, something like that, and you can tie it with some decorative twine. Blooms will occur about 6 to 8 weeks after planting, and you can cut the old blooms off. Just don't cut the whole flower stalk off, just where the bloom and the bloom attaches to the flower stem. And then again, you want to keep moist but not soaking wet. If the soil is too wet, that could encourage bulb rot, which you do not want. And again, with reblooming, once the leaves are actively growing, after the flower is spent, you want to fertilize with a 5-10-10, and just follow the label for houseplant rates. Don't over-fertilize, that can cause burning. And the plant can be moved outside gradually after last frost, so maybe around at the beginning of June, and they do like about 6 hours of sun, so part sun, almost full sun. And then plants will go dormant around midsummer, so all the leaves are going to die back. But don't freak out, because your Amaryllis bulb should be okay. They're just going dormant. And then right before the first frost, you want to bring your plants inside, place them in a cool area, and let them stay in a chilling dormancy until new growth appears, which is going to be around October, November. Then you want to water lightly, bring the plant or the pot back into a sunny location in your home, and then again, bulbs should bloom in about 6 to 8 weeks. So it's pretty simple to bring back Amaryllis. And that's all I have for holiday horticulture.
We have one quick question here for
Sure.
you. When do you repot the Amaryllis?
So after it goes dormant, you can repot it in September, October, if you feel, because you can just keep it in the pot the whole time when you put it outside. So if you just want to bring it in, there's not really a whole lot of need to repot it. But if after a few years the bulb is getting bigger and it's growing to the size of the pot, then you would want to actually repot it at that point, because it will grow little offshoots, and so you might want to remove those offshoots and just keep the bulb. So I would say if the bulb is growing too big for its pot, then you would want to repot it.
Great, thanks. And then one last question. My cactus got so large and heavy the pot fell over. Do you need to prune every so often, and how much?
Yeah, I would recommend pruning. If it's getting to be too big for the pot, I mean, you could also pot it into a larger pot, but if it sounds like it's very large, so you can prune it back, I guess, pretty severely, so that it's not dangling too much. If you're seeing that it's dangling too much from the pot, you can, I mean, it depends on how big the plant is, but you could, those pieces of cladophylls will, once they're kind of calloused, after you take them off the adjoining cladophyle or the stem, they can be replanted, and you could have even more plants, so you can give them to your friends and family, and kind of share the wealth.
Angela, thank you. We're going to get to our very next speaker, who is Bill Erickson, my colleague from Monmouth County. He's the agricultural agent there. And Bill's going to give us some fascinating information about the Christmas tree industry and Christmas trees in general. So, Bill.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks everyone for being here. And as we go through this talk, I hope that you'll appreciate how important it is to keep it real this Christmas. In New Jersey, there are over 5,000 acres devoted to Christmas tree farms. And a lot of that is on very small farms, or farms that have small amounts of acreage devoted to Christmas trees. So on average, it's between 5 to 10 acres in Christmas trees per farm. And there's many small farmers who make up our Christmas tree production in the state. And a lot of farms will do Christmas trees as a part of a diversified agriculture operation. So they might grow vegetables or orchard crops or nursery crops during the spring and summer and fall months, but then this gives the farmers another income stream and another way to get out and visit the farms during the late fall and early winter months. Also, one of the latest Census of Agriculture reports found that Jersey-grown Christmas trees contribute about $3 million to the agricultural economy. So good business opportunity for growers. And I've got a quote here from Tim Dunn, who's the co-owner of Woodsedge Tree Farm. And I think he sums it up really well when he says that Christmas tree farming is more than just producing trees. It's really an agritourism event for New Jersey families. So you can go to the farm, you can meet the farmer and ask them about how the trees are grown. You can enjoy the day at the farm and breathe the fresh air that the trees are producing. So it's really an opportunity to go out and to make memories with the family. Many farms will do hay rides or have hot chocolate or cider, and you can actually go out into the field. So it's a great experience. Tim is also the vice president of the New Jersey Christmas Tree Growers Association, and this is an association of 130 Christmas tree farmers in New Jersey who would get together for educational workshops to share strategies of growing trees. And their goal is to use integrated pest management to produce trees as sustainably as possible and of the highest quality as possible. So right here in New Jersey. So it's a great organization that we work with as well. So something that we may not realize about real Christmas trees is that they have great benefits for the environment in New Jersey. So they're preserving open space for one thing, which is really important. If we look at this picture, we can see trees growing. We can see the soil is covered. So there's no bare exposed soil for erosion. We have grassed walkways, and the trees' roots are helping to stabilize the soil. They help to clean the air. The trees are producing oxygen, and they're absorbing and removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So that can help with climate change by sequestering carbon, and they use this carbon to grow. They turn it into needles, branches, and roots. And so they actually store that in the tree itself and take it out of the atmosphere. And this preserves open space. So where we have Christmas tree farms, we don't have pavement or other development. It's preserving this area, these natural areas of our state. Christmas tree farms also provide wildlife habitat, and they're essentially functioning as young forests. So if you think about it, the trees are growing for about 7 to 10 years. It takes to produce a mature Christmas tree before it's harvested. And this is a young, early succession forest ecosystem. And this supports many different types of wildlife. So it can be nesting sites for sparrows, mourning doves, and robins, and other bird species, such as this cardinal. We'll visit them as well. So providing this habitat, well, you only really get this benefit from locally grown trees. So if we're shipping in, real trees from other states, they're deriving the benefit of having the wildlife habitat and the cleaning of the air and the stabilization of the soil. So it's only through locally grown trees that we really get to achieve these ecosystem benefits. So I mentioned that trees conserve soil, and they do this in several ways. So we saw, the grassed walkways, the soil being covered there, and the roots of the tree, go into the soil. They help to hold it together. And this is unique for Christmas tree crops, is that many times the roots will stay in the soil after the tree is harvested. So if you harvest, a carrot, or at the end of the season, you pull tomatoes out of the ground, you pull the roots out as well. But trees, a lot of Christmas tree farms will, after the tree is harvested, they'll leave the stump and they'll leave the roots in the ground and just plant the next trees next to it. And so this, over time, will feed soil organisms. It will break down slowly, add organic matter to the soil, and help to hold the soil in place. Also, for every tree harvested, 1 to 3 new trees are planted in the spring. So it's this constant regeneration of the young forest ecosystem. And across the United States, the Nature Conservancy reports that there are 500 million Christmas trees being grown, but each year only 30 million are being harvested. So Christmas tree farming is supporting the conservation of about 500 million acres at any one time. And we harvest about a sixth of that and then replant it, and it can grow back again. So it's this cycle, it's like a crop rotation perennial system. And trees usually don't require very much fertilizer or other pesticide or fungicide inputs compared to other crops. They're adapted for fairly poor soil conditions, so they don't require very much in the way of inputs. So what about after the holidays? Your Christmas tree can still provide benefits to the environment. And so this is a great picture. This is a program from Island Beach State Park, which is one of my favorite places in the state and probably in the world as well. But they do dune restoration, sand dune restoration using Christmas trees. And what they can do, so this is from 2 years ago, they didn't do this program last year, but hopefully they'll do it again this year. And you can bring your Christmas tree there, and they dig trenches by the dunes, and then volunteers lay the trees in the trenches, and they will stay there and help to stabilize the sand so storms don't wash the sand away, and the sand dune ecosystems are protected by this barrier of the Christmas trees. And they'll break down very slowly over time because there's not a lot of decomposition happening in the sand. So this is a really cool project, great way that they're recycling the trees. And I think they got 2,000 or 3,000 trees, when they put out the call for request 2 years ago, and they weren't quite expecting that, but volunteers stepped up and worked on this great project. So how do you choose? Every year I feel like you look for the perfect one, you get it, and you get it set up, and you say, oh, this is the best tree ever, this is the perfect one, and that happens every year, and that's great. But how do you choose that perfect one when there are so many options? So there's actually quite a few different species of Christmas trees. So it's not just one species of tree that we're talking about here. And they all have their own shape, color, needles, and scent to them. And the more we know about these different characteristics, then you can start to, look for certain ones if there is something you're looking for in particular. Or as we'll see, if you're sensitive to allergens, there are certain trees that are generally a little better for people who are suffering from allergies. So that can also be an important way to choose the perfect one. So first up, I'll mention is Douglas fir, which is not actually a true fir. It's actually in the pine family, but starting off in a confusing manner, set that aside. Douglas fir is a very common tree that we see from our Christmas tree growers. It's been grown for many years because it has some great characteristics for trees. So in firs in general, even the fake firs like Douglas fir have softer needles than something like spruce. So they feel soft to the touch. And they have flat needles. As we see with spruce, they're going to have more angular needles, but firs and Douglas fir have soft, flat needles. They're usually dark to blue-green, and they have this full classic conical Christmas tree shape. And so the Christmas tree shape is really important. And this doesn't just come naturally. If you see trees growing in the wild, they don't have that perfect form that our Christmas tree has. And this is the work, and the art form of our Christmas tree growers. They're pruning these trees regularly every season, a little bit of shaping, not too much. And over the course of 7 years, they bring it to this shape. So it's a little bit over time, and it's a skilled hand that's shaping these trees in this way. Douglas firs do have a good smell, a sweet, piney scent, sort of outdoorsy scent. And that's one of my favorite characteristics of a tree, is to have that aroma and that fragrance fill the house. One thing about Douglas fir, though, is that they have to be kept well watered because they can drop their needles easily if they dry out. So one thing to keep in mind for Douglas firs if you bring one home. Another classic, some people will call balsam fir the original Christmas tree, and you can see they look like the classic picture in your mind of a Christmas tree. These are true firs. They have dense, dark green needles and sort of this pyramidal crown shape. They have good fragrance, so classic Christmas tree smell. And if you look at the needles, this is really cool about balsam firs and some of the other firs. The underside has sort of a silvery appearance. So you get this silver shimmer when the needles are pointing up, when the branches are pointing in different directions. And this is actually the stomata on the bottom. So those are the pores on the leaves that exchange gas for the tree, and they're white, and they form these two white stripes on the bottom of the leaves, of the needles. So this is kind of a cool characteristic of some of the firs also, if you are looking for that little bit of difference in color. One thing about balsam firs is that the branches are a little bit flexible. So the heaviest of ornaments, they might not be the best for that. They can bend under some of the really heavy ornaments. We also have Frasier Furs, which are closely related to balsam firs. They have similar shape. They also have the underside of their needles being silvery with the stomata. Their needles are a little bit shorter, just by a little bit. Good fragrance, good needle retention, as with the balsam fir, but they're a little bit stronger. So they're going to, their branches are going to be just a little bit stronger, hold up to a little bit more weight with some of the ornaments. This is a relative newcomer to the Christmas tree market in New Jersey, which means that they were probably started 7 to 10 years ago. Anything that's coming on new to the market now. These are Kanan Firs. So it's pronounced Kanan, which is a valley in West Virginia where this tree was originally found. It's closely related to balsam firs, and it was found in the Kanan Valley. So these are Kanan Firs, and maybe you'll see these at the Christmas tree farm this year. And they have this nice symmetrical shape and good density of branches. And you can see their needles, though, they're a little bit shorter and a little bit more rigid than some of the balsam fir and the Frasier fir. Blue-green in color. Fragrance not quite as strong as the other firs, but it is a good, decent Christmas tree smell. And they also have excellent needle retention. So that's a characteristic that's important to a lot of people. Concolor firs, or also called white firs, they have sort of this softer appearance. And you can see that looking at the tree, but then when you look at the needles, you can see they're not quite as dense. They're a little bit smaller, a little bit more narrow, also flat needles. And this one has a unique citrus aroma. So it's a little bit of a different look than some of the other classic Christmas trees. And so if you're looking for something different this year, this is a good option as well. Noble fir, this is one of sort of an old, classic, excellent overall Christmas tree. They keep for a long time. They have a great appearance. You can see sort of shorter, dense needles. They have strong branches, and their greenery can be cut and used for wreaths and garland really well also. So it holds up in a great way that can withstand being cut from the tree and using the branches for other decorations. So they also have this underside with the silvery appearance. So this is a nice tree. And these will actually grow to over 200 feet tall in the wild if they're left to grow to full maturity. So well-deserved name, the noble fir. Moving on to spruce, we have Colorado blue spruce, which you may be more familiar with seeing in a landscape environment, but these make nice Christmas trees as well. So as we know, they sort of have this distinctive bluish, gray, silvery appearance to their needles. But one thing about spruce as compared to fir is that their needles are sharper. So they're not flat needles like fir has, they're more of an angular, four-sided needle, and they're a little bit sharper. So they also tend to be a little bit stronger. A lot of spruce have strong branches, good form, and the needles last a long time. What you're not going to get with the spruce is the same fragrance, the same smell as the fir trees that we had mentioned. So you're not going to get that outdoorsy, woodsy kind of smell. That classic Christmas tree smell is not going to come from the spruce. Sometimes they can also take longer to grow than the fir trees. So they would be justified to be sold for a higher price sometimes. If you see these going for a higher price at the farms, it's because they were probably growing for another year or two longer than some of the other trees, and it's all of the costs associated with growing a tree for a longer period of time. I'll also mention that in the wild, Colorado blue spruce can grow and live for 600 to 800 years. That's pretty incredible. This can be a really long-lived species. White spruce is another option you can see similar to blue spruce, but not quite the same distinctive blue color. Another good tree for ornaments, just has strong branches and these short, stiff, bluish-green needles, good shape, good needle retention, but again, not necessarily going to get the same fragrance as the fir trees. Another spruce that we see very common in the landscape is the Norway spruce, and this is native to Europe, hence the name, Norway spruce. Dark green color, but the characteristic of this tree is the drooping branches. So a really unique shape on Norway spruce, really cool tree. Strong branches, great for heavy ornaments, but they don't last a super long time. So if you're someone like me and you like to get your Christmas tree very early so you can keep it up as long as possible, this is not the best choice. But if you're going to get your tree maybe 2 weeks before Christmas or so, this will hold up for that amount of time. It's also beneficial to get one fresh cut from the field, so it's as fresh as possible and going to hold the needles for as long as it can. Also, this is the tree that's chosen each year, the Norway spruce, to be the Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center in New York City. Scotch pine is a nice tree for growers because it's widely adapted to many different soil conditions. So we've seen, when we go out and visit Christmas tree farms, we've seen some great disease resistance on Scotch pine. It's a tough tree. It grows really well. And so this is a nice one from a grower's perspective and from a sustainability perspective. Dark green needles, and they're produced in bundles of 2. So the needles attach to the branch on a fascicle, and each needle, there's 2 that go into the branch on Scotch pine. Holds up really well in the house. Great needle retention. Not super strong scent the way the firs have, but this is another nice choice. And then eastern white pine. So this is a native pine to our area. It has long, soft, flexible needles that many people may be familiar with, and these are in bundles of 5 instead of 2 like we observed on the Scotch pine. So nice color on the needles, nice shape, and this one does not have a strong aroma, but it's also been reported that people who suffer from allergies have less reactions with a white pine Christmas tree. So if having the tree in the house bothers you, or someone in your family, you may want to try an eastern white pine. But it should be noted also that these branches are not as strong as some of the other species. They're a little more flexible, so it's generally not going to be as good for some of the heaviest, largest ornaments. But these can still hold their own, and they can keep their needles really well in the house. Thank you, everyone. Check out the New Jersey Christmas Tree Growers Association. They've got a lot of great resources and educational materials on their site, or reach out to one of us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Bill, thank you very much. A lot of great information there. Next up, we have my colleague, Tim Waller. And Tim is is a plant biologist and has a PhD in plant biology with a focus on pest management, including insect disease, and utilizing a IPM and systems approach. Tim is a specialist in the nursery area, and we're very fortunate to have him with us here tonight. He's actually going to talk to us about the care of fresh cut trees, and also if you want to save that tree and plant it out in your yard, how can you best do that, and how can you take care of the tree that you put in the house so that it lasts the longest and keeps its needles on. So Tim, it's good to have you here tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, and welcome everyone. So we've been talking about plant care. What I want to cover today is all of the other steps that are involved with getting that tree, getting it into your house, and having the best success. So having a live tree or a tree to be planted is going to be the most beneficial. In the interest of time, I am going to move rather quickly, but you can reach out to me at any time. I'll put my email up at the end, but let's get right to it. So today we're going to talk about the two main classes of Christmas trees that you are going to experience. One is probably the most common, and that's a lot of what we've been talking about, is cut trees. And then we also have trees that are going to be planted out, and these would be known as B&B, which is balled and burlap, as well as you could get smaller container grown trees. An important note here, though, is that both types of these, whether it's cut or it's going to be planted, are living trees. It's just a matter of how long that they are going to keep going. So first, we're going to start off with cut trees, the more common tree that you're going to be picking up this year for the holiday. And I hope throughout the duration of my presentation that you see supporting local Christmas tree nurseries is not only good for our region and the industry as a whole, but it's also the best way to get a great tree that will last all the way through your holiday season. So before you head out and you go to the farm to have a great day with the family, you have to get ready at home first. So some considerations, and we're going to talk about some of these in more detail, but where are you putting this tree? Is your spot ready at home? How big can you actually fit a tree in there? And what you need to do is to understand how tall that room is, how much the base is going to lift it up, and the size of your Christmas tree topper. And then knowing the dimensions of your stand is of paramount importance, as we will discuss later. And then you also need to actually prepare that area. What happens if you have a Christmas tree with a water basin full of water and it gets knocked over? Are you going to ruin a carpet? Are you going to ruin your hardwood floors? If possible, having a transition area such as a shed or a garage, something of the sort, is also a good idea, as we'll discuss as well. And placement of that Christmas tree within the home is very important. Here we have the quintessential vision of where a Christmas tree is to be placed in a living room. This is probably the worst place that you could put a Christmas tree in a living room. Not only are Christmas trees flammable, and as they age, become more flammable, whether it's a fireplace or a heater vent, dry heat blowing onto these plants is going to desiccate them quicker. It's going to make them become dehydrated. And when trees become dehydrated, they drop their needles. So going back to the size of the tree, pretty much the sky's the limit when it comes to Christmas trees. You can get tiny little tabletop trees that are great and they can be used for various occasions, as well as getting a tree that's up to 80, 90 feet tall that is used in special locations. But generally speaking, for the average size Christmas tree, you want to be shooting around 6 to 7 feet. This size will fit in most homes with the tree topper and the couple extra inches that the base will add to it. You can also go smaller if that is more fitting to the environment that you're going to be putting the tree in. But the stands are of paramount importance. So if we think about when we have cut flowers, what do we do with cut flowers? We take them and we put them into a vase. That vase, yes, it does hold those flowers upright so we can enjoy them and it displays them, but the real function of that is to hold water. And that's the exact same thing that's happening with your Christmas tree stand. It doesn't matter on what style of Christmas tree stand, as long as it securely holds your tree and it can hold an adequate amount of water for a cut Christmas tree. And you need to know this diameter before you head out. But if you have a Christmas tree stand that will hold a 6-inch tree and you put a 6-inch tree in there, you have no more room for water. And generally speaking, per inch diameter of the tree, you want to have a 1 quart capacity available to you in that basin, and you don't really want anything that doesn't hold at least 1 gallon of water. The reason for that 1 gallon is that a fresh cut Christmas tree can suck that up in the first 24 hours, and you're going to have to be going back and watering and watering and watering. All right, so you never ever want your Christmas tree to be without water, and you also do not want to whittle down the sides of the tree to help it fit into your base. The reason for this is the outermost portion of the Christmas tree is what's really sucking up the most water. All right, so we know what we're doing at home. We've got everything ready. We're getting ready to head out to the Christmas tree farm. Well, a great tip here is to call ahead and call around to multiple locations. Once you have a location situated, grab the family and prepare to start a new tradition or to continue on an established tradition, because this process of visiting local operations, you really become part of a community. And that's what the holidays are all about, after all. When you get to the location, or when you're preparing to go to the location, make sure you have situational appropriate clothing. You don't want to wear a beautiful white outfit to this event because you're going to be cutting down a tree or carrying a tree that is resinous. It could be wet on the ground, etc. When you call ahead, you should also ask what type of cutting implementation do they prefer at that location. Will they provide the material, or do they prefer to cut it for you? You want to have straps for your vehicle. And when you're there, make sure you take a look around. That a lot of these smaller operations have very cool seasonal offerings. I was just at a farm a couple weeks ago where one of their seasonal offerings is beach plum jam. And for those of you that are familiar with that plant, that is an extremely elusive gift that they have at their particular location. So we're on the farm or the plantation, and we're walking around. I like the idea of Jersey fresh here as very much the same thing when it comes to Christmas trees. The best way to guarantee freshness is to be on site and have that tree cut right there in front of you, or speaking with the operation to get an idea of how fresh it is. Because freshness equals needle retention. And then usability. That was a great presentation by Bill Erickson, giving you an idea of how you are going to decorate the tree can help dictate what type of tree you want. If you've got huge ornaments, you want stronger branches, and all the other cool things that you can do with these various types of Christmas trees. Something that I really want to point out here is, yes, we all want the perfect Christmas tree, but when you're out there, you will see trees that have interior needle loss. This is a natural process of many conifers. And in a lot of cases, you could take this tree with the large ornaments that you're going to put on and make it beautiful. It's a way of saving the resources and really turning a Charlie Brown tree into something beautiful. So maybe you don't go to a choose and cut location. You're stopping by a pre-cut lot. This is where you really need to ask questions. You need to know when it was cut, because that indicates how fresh it is. Having an idea of where they're coming from, or whether it was a recent delivery, will help you understand the freshness as well. If these trees are coming from Canada, that means they could have been cut weeks ago. And if they weren't properly hydrated, when you get that tree to your house, it could have been out of water for multiple weeks to a month. A cool trick, two ways to test this, physically test this, is the pull test, where on the outer surface of the tree, you basically grab a small branch and you pull lightly across it. If you pull almost all the needles off, you know that tree is extremely dry, and it's not fresh, and those needles aren't going to last until Christmas. Another cool way to do it is if you have two trees that are of similar size and species, and you hold one up and it's much heavier than the other, that weight is water, and that water within the plant means that those needles are going to be held on for much longer. You can also feel the bottom of the cut trees. If they're very sticky, that's also a good indicator of a relatively fresh cut. All right, so we're back to the choose and cut local Christmas tree operation, and you found the perfect tree. It's a good practice to be communicative and ask how the farm prefers trees to be cut, and if they want you to do it or what have you. Again, this is where community comes into play. The best way to handle cutting down a Christmas tree is to have more than one person. And the reason for this is when you make a very low cut on this tree and it begins to tilt, if you don't have someone supporting the other part of the tree, you can have peels that go up into that tree, disrupting that outer surface that is the best location for sucking up water. And you can drastically impact the needle retention. So once you get this tree home, or especially if you have picked up a tree from a cut lot, you want to make sure that you make a fresh cut onto these trees. I'm going to re-say that. If you pick up a tree from a pre-cut Christmas tree lot, you must have a fresh cut, either done by yourself, and a lot of places will do this for you, but it's imperative because it's like pulling off the scab that lets water come back up into the trees. And again, do not whittle down the sides because that's where most of the water is being drawn up. At a cut and choose and some pre-cut Christmas tree lots, you're going to see some other machinery there. I think most of us have seen Christmas tree balers where they run the tree through. There are similar units that run the tree through and wrap twine around it. And this is just to help in transport. But there are also other pieces of equipment such as tree shakers that remove old needles. If there are any insects in there, it'll shake them out of there, and it generally cleans up the plant. And some of you may have Christmas tree stands that have a spike in the center of them. There's a piece of machinery called a tree driller that drills a very nice hole in the bottom, and that helps you get your tree situated more quickly. This isn't really impacting the plant's ability to suck up water because that outside portion of the trunk is still intact. So you've got the perfect tree, it's on your car, you've made it home, you've pulled into your parking spot. What do? The very, very first thing you need to think about is water. Under no circumstances whatsoever should you take that tree, place it somewhere for a couple days, and then put it into a stand and add water. It immediately should go from the car to water to wherever it's going to end up. Another key component here is acclimation, or conditioning the plant to be able to jump from these very different environments. It's a strange thing that we put plants through, is cutting them outside in the winter, bring them into a warm house, pending you've paid your heating bill, and then expecting them to behave totally normally. In the best case scenario, or if, say, you go out and you purchase a tree on Saturday, but you can't set it up until Thursday, the best thing you can do with that is to take the tree from the car, place it into a bucket of water, place that in a sheltered area, such as a garage, a shed, some other location at your home that's just a little bit warmer than the outside world, but not as warm as where the plants are going. And you can keep them wrapped up during this period of time. And after a few days or so, once you're situated, you can move that inside. If it's going from the car to the living room, it should go from the car directly into the stand, and water should be added immediately, not multiple hours later after you've situated other things, because the quicker you can get a tree into water, the better needle retention you will have. And remember, fresh cut trees, they can suck up a gallon of water in just 24 hours. So you really have to be cognizant of that. So hopefully you made it through the whole holiday season before you start to see this situation unfolding. If you start to notice some needles are dropping and it's after the holidays, well, now's a great time to get rid of that before this happens, because during that process, that's when trees become fire hazard. Also, it's a great point to reflect on different habits that you might have done throughout the holiday season that would have pushed needle drops, such as not watering enough, not really being on top of it. Or is that room too hot? Is there a heater vent blasting onto this thing 24/7? Just kind of give you some clues to how to avoid this in future seasons. And this line here, this is borrowed from Penn State, but I think it perfectly sums up caring for cut Christmas trees. If you can get a fresh tree, the best way to do that is a local New Jersey Christmas tree grower. Get a fresh cut right there on the farm and immediately get it into fresh water. And if you do all those things, most trees will retain their needles throughout the whole holiday season, by and large. So like Bill was talking about before, after the holiday season, recycling is important for many different reasons, but Christmas trees, they are these big 3D structures that we can do really cool stuff with, and they are packed full of natural energy. Whether that's for municipal compost, habitat reconstruction, or you have a local pack of alpacas. What I mean by this, though, is Christmas trees can provide real habitat for smaller animals if they're outside, whether that's birds, small mammals, etc. So they have a real place in the world of recycling. So living trees, or trees that are going to be planted. This slide's a little bit misleading. Here we have a noble fir. Noble fir is one of the firs that Bill Erickson showed in his slideshow. And what I'm hoping to drive home here is that these, the Christmas trees that we are seeing when we go out to these plantations, they are, like Bill Erickson said, we're looking at a baby forest. It's a tiny forest of conifers. So here, if we have the scale of a human to a 5-6 foot tall Christmas tree, and we put that person in scale with a home, and look at one of the most popular types of Christmas trees. Here we have a Douglas fir that's sitting over 250 feet. Granted, this is probably out west in British Columbia, and I've had the privilege of seeing one of these up close, and it's truly amazing to think about when you see them at a Christmas tree farm. So what I'm trying to drive home here, though, is that by getting a plant that a tree that you will use for Christmas, that's also going to be part of the landscape, it's a real opportunity to work with the ecosystem. So this was supposed to be a huge reveal, but the animations weren't exactly working. But first, I'd like to introduce the most important person on this slide, and that's Tony the tree. Tony the tree, I'm kidding. Lauren Fordyce is our new Master Gardener Coordinator down in Cumberland County. And what she's doing this year is using a native Eastern red cedar as her Christmas tree. And I think it looks beautiful. And this plant is going to go in, it's going to have all of the impact that we want from a Christmas tree, but then it's going to be part of the ecosystem for a lifetime. And I think that's a really profound, beautiful thing. So you think you might want to get into Christmas trees that you can plant outside later. Well, my first question to you is, does it have to be a traditional conifer? Could it be a native hardwood that you've been meaning to plant? And are you flexible on what you would really consider a Christmas tree? Do you want a small container tree, or do you want something that's in a B&B that's balled and burlapped that's going to go immediately outside? And are you willing to work with this tree to get what you want for the holidays and what it needs to be a productive part of the ecosystem? So preparing your new tree, this looks like a lot, but really, if you do your homework and you figure out what you can grow in that area, what kind of tree you want, the characteristics that you're really looking to push, you can really be successful if you prepare that area, the planting area, prior to the holidays, meaning now-ish, and also understand how alien it is for us to take a plant from cold to hot to cold, and meaning that we have to be gentle about that and respect the tree. After the holidays, you would then go out and plant that tree. And then once that tree is established, you treat it like a normal landscape plant. It's really important here to respect this living tree and understand that the holidays are a very short period of time in the grand scheme of the potential of this organism. So the general timeline there for acclimating a tree and being gentle about the process is you go out to the nursery or some other place where you're acquiring the tree that's probably more akin to outside environments where it's been growing all season long. Once you acquire this tree, you want to get it into a sheltered area that's just a little bit warmer than the outside world, but not as hot as your living room per se. And then a week or two before Christmas, get it into your living room, dress it up. Immediately after Christmas, get it back to that sheltered area for another week or so, and then you can begin the process of moving it into your yard. Watering is going to be very nuanced on all of the different types of trees that you're bringing in, but generally speaking, when it comes to conifers, they don't wilt like something like a hydrangea would wilt. So they don't give very strong visual cues. So bearing that in mind, keeping that soil moderately moist, not dried out, not sopping wet. The last thing you want is your live Christmas tree sitting in a bucket of water. But just generally understanding that you need to be respectful and patient with this tree to plant it out into the ecosystem. So before you get your tree, best thing to do is go out and dig the hole before the ground is frozen solid. You're going to want to do that approximately 2 times the size of the root ball. And if you don't know what size you're getting yet, I would start at 2 feet and go from there. and you're going to save that backfill for later on when you go to plant it. Fill the hole with fill the hole with leaves after that and cover it with a board so your neighbor doesn't break their ankle in there. Then you have your holidays and acclimate the plants accordingly. Then bring them back outside. You have one shot to plant your trees at the correct depth, and you want the crown of that tree just a little bit higher than the soil line. You're going to want to liberate the plants, get that burlap off, get them out of the pots, and in many cases, potted trees, particularly potted conifers, are going to be pretty root bound. If you just go from the pot straight to the soil, those trees will grow okay for a couple years, but eventually they will fail. So you want to use something like a hori-hori or various garden knives and disrupt the surface or slice the surface of those roots to promote more lateral growth formation. And don't plant it too deep. Get that plant into the ground, use the backfill from the previous dig out. You don't want to use potting mix. You want to just use that natural backfill that you saved earlier. You put the backfill in, don't tamp it down super tight, fill it up, give it a decent watering, add a little bit more of the backfill. Don't go too high. Remember the depth is critical here. Once you have that situated, add some leaf mulch and water it again regularly throughout the season. And if you do this, you're going to have a happy, healthy tree that could last a lifetime. Here, one of my favorite Christmas trees is the Concolor fir. And these trees are going to be part of this ecosystem for a long time. And just imagine all the birds and insects and everything that this tree serves to function for us, as well as this Colorado blue spruce that are absolutely beautiful in the landscape. Thank you very much for having me. And I hope everyone has a great holiday season. But something I would just like to drive home here is that the holidays are about community, especially in the world that we live in today. By supporting a local Christmas tree operation, you are contributing to community, you're contributing to those people's families, and you have the extra benefit of getting the best possible Christmas tree. Here's some great organizations with a lot more information, and here's my email if you have any additional questions. So thank you very, very much for your time, everyone.
Tim, Bill, and Angela, thank you very, very much for all the wonderful information today. A lot of great info to help us get those plants through the holiday season and beyond. I've got a good friend that plants his Christmas trees every year. He gets them bulb and burlapped, and he's got a yard full of trees, and he can tell you which year he planted the tree. And he gets a lot of joy out of planting those trees every year. And we do recommend, as Tim said, that you support our community by buying local, by buying from our growers that take a lot of time and a lot of care producing those trees. And as Bill said, there's huge benefit to buying directly and keeping our local growers supported. So we hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next time on Are You Ready to Garden?